let's talk about current events. Um, I guess the huge thing at this hour, even though there's been a ton of crazy stuff happening in the last 24, um, the the big news of this hour is they're dropping out of Congress, and that's a good news, and that's a good sign, and that's the direction we need to be heading. Um, Eric Swalwell is out; he's resigning, walking away. Terrific news. And Tony Gonzalez, the guy who sexually harassed his staff member until she committed suicide, and then he moved on to another staff member, he has also resigned. So I celebrate both. Hopefully, eventually, they get into court trouble of some sort for their degenerate activities. I was just having a little conversation on notes that a lot of people misunderstand sex crimes in general, and they really misunderstand like how they are constantly escalating criminals. I think I spoke to this before, but we knew from the work that the psychologists, psychiatrists, and the profilers did that the peeping toms, the flashers, the gropers, whatever, they start small and work up bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until they become violent rape suspects. And the rape may not be what you think it is. It's not necessarily about sex. It's about control, power, domination, cruelty. About manipulation a lot of times. So we don't need these type of people in Congress. I don't care what political party they're in or they're not in. That makes no difference. A degenerate is a degenerate is a degenerate. Let's stop subdividing things that don't need to be subdivided. Okay. And remember, just because these two guys left, you still have a handful of people in Congress that probably should follow suit and resign. Maybe not for that type of offense, but definitely for a whole list of other misconduct, from campaign donations, swindling, to insider trading, to a lot of other problems, foreign activities. A lot of shit's going on, and I'm happy that two men who should not be in any role of authority or power or decision making, I'm glad they're out of Congress. And they were walked out of Congress from my readings. If I'm getting the tea leaves right here, they were basically told to leave or they were going to be expelled and paraded. So they left. But, you know, Pete Hegseth, he's got a $50,000 payment on his record for the Hilton Hotel alleged sexual assault, sexual battery, whatever the police called it. And he paid out $50,000 to keep her quiet. If Gonzalez is going and Swalwell is going, then Hegseth should go today too. Not to mention, you know, the sitting president of the United States is an adjudicated rapist. I put that up in notes today. Okay, the judge clarified. Trump raped E. Jean Carroll. That's what was said in court. That's what was said in documents in court. That was part of the judge's finding of fact. Okay, so it's great they're gone. Don't get me wrong. I like Swalwell in the insurrection era and the adjudication of the insurrection in Congress. I thought he was a major player in that, along with Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney and Benny Thompson from Mississippi. May not agree with all of Benny's politics. I like him. He seems to be a good old character. Every time I see him on the TV, I pay attention to what he's going up. Like I said, don't have to agree with everything, but I think he's okay. Hope we don't learn bad things about him. But this is a twofer for California because with Swalwell out, the governor race just got narrower. And since the Republicans have fallen in line here like they do everywhere else, they have already anointed pre-primary who their candidate is. It's going to be Steve Hilton, the British guy who was the advisor to David Cameron in the British government. I already think we have way too much foreign influence in our governance, and I really don't need Cameron's chief advisor to be the governor of California, so he's fucking out. He has a Trump endorsement, so he's fucking out. So that leaves us with Xavier or Katie Porter. Becerra, Xavier Becerra or Katie Porter. Got to figure out what to do there. But I said, when we were looking at the midterms and we're looking at who to vote for the midterms, I think one of the common denominators we have to have with candidates is they are willing to clean their own house. Regardless whether Democratic or Republican leadership in the House or anybody else, they personally have to walk the walk. If they're not willing to do the right thing when they're elected into office, including getting the scumbags out of the House or out of the Senate, then you shouldn't be there. Like anybody at this point who would vote no on the expulsion of Eric Swalwell or Tony Gonzalez, one, they need their fucking head examined. Two, big question on whether or not they're a degenerate too. And three, they shouldn't be in Congress. Melinda or Melania? So that happened. It's a start. We need to keep that momentum going in a good forward strength motion because we need a different set of people in Congress. Swalwell isn't the only Democrat that's failed the American people. Comes directly to mind is Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries. Both pretty useless in my book. Okay, so they could go too. So think about who you want in the midterms. Think about how we avoid personalities and personas like Tony Gonzalez, like Eric Swalwell, and more importantly, get a commitment from that candidate. If they know somebody's a screw up in Congress, get them the hell out of Congress. The really good news today was, yes, they resigned, but the better news was both sides of leadership and both constituencies in Congress were yelling pretty loudly at these guys. Get the fuck out, or we're going to throw you out and we're going to parade you out the door. You can walk out and make whatever Twitter statement you want to fucking make, or we can throw your ass out and hold 3 hours worth of press conferences about it. So they both got out. The other big deal from the last 24 hours is, did Dear Leader Pornstar finally go a bridge too far? Because it seems like today he's stepped on a political landmine he can't step off of. Nobody's buying his bullshit except the dumbest of the dumb MAGA red hat rubes and the sycophantic politicians and advisors around him. Nobody else is buying why he posted himself as Jesus Christ. But this is the thing I'm going to go off on here. I'm not going to try to make it too ranty. But I am going to tell you I told you so. Okay? If you are surprised at all that Donald J. Trump, con artist, felon at large, would put up an AI render with him as Jesus with the seraphims being summoned behind him. And you think that's something he wouldn't do for effect? He wouldn't do it for clickbait? He wouldn't do it for attention? Yes, he was. Why am I so sure of that? Because, MAGA, you're the one that gave him permission to do it. He told you 10 years he was more important than Jesus Christ, your alleged savior. Okay? I know you abandoned Jesus Christ of Nazareth. I know this for a fact. I wrote an essay about it. I reposted it today on Twitter. This is an essay from August of 2023. I wrote an entire essay talking about how the polling, including religious organization polling, is picking up the fact now that the local pastor in your community is the least trusted person in your mind. Who is the number one trusted person in your mind? Dear leader, porn star, humper, Epstein file member, Epstein class leader. He is the guy over your friends, your family, your local politicians, and even your pastor. I said this in the essay. Your pastor is involved in your life on almost a daily basis. He is literally the shepherd of your flock, the leader of your community. He is your advisor. He is your mentor. He is your counselor. Okay. I talked about this the other day about, getting married by Father Donahue, the Irish Catholic priest, when I was in the Army. Okay. He knew I was an atheist and he knew my wife was Protestant. Okay. His job was to shepherd soldiers, to counsel soldiers. I was one of his flock, even though I was an atheist. Okay. I still went to marriage counseling with him. Okay. Because that's a padre's job in the Army. Okay. They're not fire and brimstone yelling at you. That's not what padres do in the Army. The one who did do it got fired. The chief of the chaplain corps threw him out. So him anointing himself, him aggrandizing himself as Jesus Christ of Nazareth, that should come to no surprise to anybody who is a politicized American Christian in the United States of America, because you elevated him to that spot 10 years ago. And you did it with full forethought. You did it with eyes wide open. So you want to scream blasphemy now. You didn't scream blasphemy when he stood around a whole bunch of terrorists who cut up reporters with hacksaws, okay, guys who funded 9/11, and he put his hand on a magical orb. Show me where the magical orb is in the book of John. Mark? Anybody? Bueller? Anyone? Bueller? I should have worn my Say Ferris t-shirt today. You didn't have a word to say when the Christian priestess, that whack job Paula White, and boy, I thought Jerry Falwell was full of shit. I thought Jim Baker was full of shit. I thought the Franklin Graham family was completely full of shit. Here comes Paula White. Holy shit. Oh, I lay my hands with magical priestess hands. Okay, really? Again, can I see the passage in the Bible? I read it. I forgot a couple of parts. Can you tell me about the blonde Christian priestess making money off of screaming Trump is a, quote, Jesus clone, close quote? You didn't yell blasphemy when she declared he was a clone of Jesus. You didn't have anything to say about that. Okay. When he literally wanted to walk through MacArthur Park in Washington, D.C., and he wanted the military and the security forces to shoot protesters in the legs to clear his path so he could walk in front of a church and hold the Bible upside down. And it wasn't just any Bible, it was his hokum Bible. Okay? His jingoistic, nationalistic, Christian, white nationalist Bible. and he was holding it upside down. You remember that? Did you cry blasphemy then? No, you did not. You said, "Oh, dear Lord leader, we'll follow you anywhere." Are you sure about that? Because, man, I made a point to go around social media. I cranked up my Tails key so I could get on Tor. I don't like them knowing my address here most times. And I started going around the right-wing social media sites, and that includes Twitter, and started doing searches on a couple of other platforms. And the blowback on social media was incredible about that AI render with him as Jesus. And for him, if you've been following my notes, you've been seeing I've been having a field day with that Trump as Jesus render all day. JD Vance claims it was a joke on Fox News, but that was 90 minutes afterwards on Fox News. Trump said, no, that was me as a Red Cross doctor. Only the fake news could have made that up. That's what he said. That was a Red Cross doctor. What? Do you have any idea what a Red Cross doctor looks like in the field? I do. The fuck? And I'm like, oh, okay. So allegedly, I didn't know this, like I said, I was raised Catholic. I'm now an atheist, but I've read the Bible. I've read parts of the Torah. I've read parts of the Quran, literature, and I did not know that Red Cross doctors were sanctified to call the highest choir of angels, the seraphims. I didn't know that. Because look behind him, up and above him in the clouds. I'm pretty sure they meant that to be the seraphims. Okay? Because anybody who claims they've talked to God is lying. You can't talk to God. If you talk to God, you probably talk to one of the seraphims. Okay? You did not talk to God. By the dogma that's in the book, you did not talk to God. You're talking to one of the messengers, the highest choir. Okay. Well, above his head, you see them. And I immediately saw two things in the AI that made me laugh in a very dark humor kind of way. And a bunch of my friends saw it the same way. I messaged on Discord my friend in Chicago. His response was identical to mine within 5 seconds. One, could you not use any other face? Trump is laying his hands on somebody to heal him, obviously as a Messiah. Okay. The face of the person he's healing looks just like Jeffrey Epstein. These guys can't even get out of their own way. They're so stupid. They're so full of shit. Because the first thing I look at the video is, why is he healing Jeffrey Epstein? Is he trying to rise Jeffrey Epstein from the dead? This is weird. And then the second thing I noticed after, I was like, why is he healing Jeffrey Epstein? And the render, I look above his head and I see the opening of the gate, kind of imagery with the light behind the clouds, like, Peter's opening up the gates, and the seraphims are coming out of the gates of heaven. Now, why would they be coming down to guard a Red Cross doctor when their job is to guard God's throne? Anybody want to answer that one? But I want to make it super, super, super redundantly clear that the blasphemy was not only intentional, but it's been encouraged for over a decade. And now you feigning offense over the blasphemous rendering is actually comical to me. Now, I think blasphemy on its own is pretty comical. Like, I'm a huge fan of Monty Python. I'm a huge fan of the old Irish comic from the 60s and 70s, David Allen. In fact, on Easter, I posted his old Easter special from BBC. It's hilarious. The Easter special starts out with him dressed up as the Monsignor, and he's, well, we know today is a very important day. We all know what to do. We all know our places. And then he turns around, 1, 2, 3, like he's playing hide and go seek, and all the nuns and priests run away to play hide and go seek on Easter morning. But I love the responses of people who go, that's not my Jesus. If you voted for him, if you supported any of his policies, yes, he is your Jesus, and you told him so. Okay? Unless you have that disease that, you know, your brain can't remember, you know, anything past 24 hours, you have to remember that you're the ones that encouraged this shit completely. He hijacked a list of things. Let's talk about Dear Leader Pornstumper and his multiple act of hijacking here. Because the very first thing he did was hijacking a major political party, and he knew exactly how to do it. Okay, play into your bigotry. That's all he had to do. Didn't have to promise you a tax cut. Didn't have to tell you he loved the Klan or wanted to eliminate black people. All he had to do was deliver a feeling to the crowd that, hey, it's okay to be an asshole and a bigot. Let's go after people. And the entire party jumped on it. Okay. Then he started hijacking American culture, especially culture around men. The whole alpha bro bullshit, the whole masculinity trend, which that was another conversation I had with I've had it twice. I've had it one with my friend who was a captain in the Canadian military. The other one was my father-in-law, who was a command sergeant major in a Green Beret. And we've talked about the alpha bro culture. And they're like, you just look at it like an ass. Like every time I've seen like an Andrew Tate video, I've just laughed and thought, what a douchebag. I mean, if you were in the MP company in early 1980s with us in West Germany, or, you know, on the DMZ in South Korea, in an MP company there, in second ID, I was in 8th in Germany. That boy would have lasted 5 minutes. He'd have gotten his ass kicked on a regular basis. He'd have up and left. He'd gone AWOL. Okay, these are not brave men. These are posers. These are tough guys. Oh, I take my shirt off and I smoke a cigar. That makes me a tough guy. If you think so. I literally think we had women in the MPs back in the day. I think that could clearly kick Andrew Tate's ass. Clearly kick his ass. Never mind, like one of our sergeant who was Native American, massive man. He was one of the largest guys in my unit, other than the guy who got drafted by the NFL the same day he got drafted by the Army for Vietnam. So he ended up going to Vietnam instead of playing football in his life. Those two guys were the two biggest guys I ever saw. Just massive, broad-shouldered, you know, V-back men. Yeah, this whole culture thing they've done, they try to tell young men that empathy is weakness. And Love says they probably would cry if they got a hangnail. Probably, yes. And it's funny though, all joking aside, like I've seen some very angry, tough, large men pass out because they had a needle stuck in their arm. Some people do weird things. I have a pain disorder. I don't pass out when they put a needle in my arm, and it really hurts when they take blood. It really hurts. It feels like somebody is stabbing me. Because after the accident, my pain response got all fucked up. But yeah, I mean, empathy is weakness, is so wrong. I mean, you know, my father-in-law saw a lot. I mean, he was both a Ranger and a Green Beret in Vietnam, and then he did stuff after Vietnam for many, many years. He spent like 22 years on the teams. He doesn't tell us a lot, and like he hasn't told my sons a whole bunch of things, because in his head it's all ugly. But he did on our thing on you know, like Thanksgiving and Christmas, you know, the night before the Thanksgiving Eve or Christmas Eve, we get together, him and I, and now my sons are older, we get together, we have a couple of whiskeys or a couple of scotches, we sit around and talk and everything. And he was telling us about how you have to follow your own rules, and you always have to have your own center of what's right and wrong. He told a story that he was in Vietnam, and they were out on patrol with some South Vietnamese Rangers. He was the Green Beret advisor, and they got into a firefight. They split up the group that was attacking him. A couple took off this way. They KIA'd a couple of them. One ended up falling, getting disarmed. They surrounded it, roll her over. It's a woman. Okay, it's a woman, female combatant. Okay, tie her up, take her back to base. We're gonna have MI question her. And he personally searched her cursively to make sure she didn't have like a bomb belt on or hidden knives or whatever, but they didn't do a complete like in custody search. And one of the other soldiers said, well, I'm going to search her. And he was like, you're not going to lay a hand on her. Okay. And he looked at him and he was serious. Like, you know, I'm the senior NCO here and you will not lay a hand on her. So he brought her back to camp. They had a forward operating base. So they put her, you know, in the center compound where she'd be safe. And they kept 2 guards on her, and he gets on the radio and he calls the local MASH unit and he says, we need a nurse. And they're like, what's going on? And he's going, I got a female prisoner. She needs to be completely searched, including probably a body cavity search for any maps, information, whatever. Because this is well known. They would secret things like prisoners do all the time. So he goes, we're holding her. You know, we can send a helicopter. He goes, no, we got one. Give us the map coordinates. We'll be there in 20 minutes. And he goes, okay. And he hears the helicopter come in. He runs to the landing pad, and off the thing comes this, you know, 40-year-old female major who's a registered nurse. Like, where's your prisoner? We're over here, ma'am. And so they put her, you know, they first did a, you know, clothes search, and she checked everything, and then she's going to take her in the building. I'm going to take her behind her curtain. I'm going to do the full strip down search. Okay, we'll just post a guard outside, right outside the curtain. Nobody has to be disrespectful or pervy about this, and do your whole medical grade assessment and search. And she goes, I'm on it. And so she took her behind the curtain, searched her. She didn't have any weapons. She was complete. She didn't have any information on her. They gave her back her clothes. They gave her food and water. Asked her if she needed medical help. You know, we have a nurse here for you if you need to. She was like, she told the interpreters, no, she was uninjured. And then we said, the nurse is going away, but you're going to be picked back up by military intelligence, and they're going to take you away for interrogation. You know, nobody abused her. Nobody sexually assaulted her in any form, shape, or way. Why? Because you have to have a little empathy. That's still a woman. Okay, maybe your enemy, okay, but you just don't start doing evil shit to a woman because you think you need to. We could totally secure the prisoner without you sexually battering her, okay, and that's the line he drew right there and there in the heat of battle. He was like, no, you are not laying a hand on that enemy prisoner, okay. I will call a nurse, a female nurse, and she will come here and she will do that for us. Okay, you just guard her. That's all you need to do. You don't touch her. And eventually MI showed up. MI smart brought a lieutenant who was a female. Okay, made sure she was always supervised by a female once in custody. And they took her out in the helicopter, and you know, that was the last Zip saw of her. Okay, she probably ended up in a POW camp for years. Okay, but it's telling kids today, telling young men especially, And I see it with young women too, which isn't good either, because women can go psychopathic too. Female serial killers are very rare, but they exist. Okay, so don't encourage anybody. Empathy and sympathy for your fellow man, even when you're in a weird situation, that's never a sign of weakness. You know, and I've heard a bunch of people, I've had Navy SEALs tell this to me, I've had Rangers telling me, Marines, like, I went out to veterans events in the city, met up with Chris Beck and a bunch of Marine RDF guys and Army intelligence guys. And later, Chris spoke at one of my company events too in Las Vegas. So we saw each other several times. And he was telling a funny story about just like popping out in this huge compound. And there's just this kid standing there. He's like 12, 13 years old. He's just a kid. He's just standing there with 3 goats, not doing anything. Well, but they look like space invaders. You know, they're wearing the big Microsoft 4-tube night vision helmet. They've got their backpacks and their radios on, their helmets, and they look like space invaders. Okay. And we're all giggling our ass off. Because like, can you imagine a kid who hasn't even seen Star Wars and he sees at 2 a.m, 10 Navy SEALs come through a gate, with a big helmet and night vision on? Probably scared the living shit out of this kid. The kid froze. He didn't know what to do. Okay. And Chris said, yeah, I had sympathy for the kid. The kid was scared to death. He literally thought he was a dead man and he didn't do anything. And you could tell he was just a little kid. So we told him in English and Arabic, fuck off. The kid was like, ah. And I've heard that time and time again. They're like, yeah, you can go in there and you can just be cruel and you can not care about anybody. But are you dealing with the problem at hand? Well, if you don't have any empathy or sympathy, the answer is probably no. Like that's one thing. Looking back on the guys and gals I worked with when I was a city peace officer, many of the people I worked with were pretty hardcore liberals. But nobody in our department, nobody displayed sociopathic tendencies. Like, yeah, that guy screwed up. I mean, I had to take him to jail. It wasn't like, oh my God, we should just go rolling around the streets and start shooting people we don't like. No, that would be crazy. The Nazis said they could shoot everybody and solve all their problems. How'd that work out? Not very well. So he hijacked a party. Then he hijacked especially young male culture. And then what did he hijack? He hijacked Christianity. And what was the Red Hat Rube's favorite little retort buzzword they would use anytime they don't like somebody challenging Trump? They're a usurper. Their favorite word for years. Okay. Didn't Donald J. Trump just usurp Jesus Christ of Nazareth? Because I think he did. And if I'm reading conservative social media correctly, so did they. Okay. Now, what's funny, it's not murdering Alex Preedy or Santos or Renee Good in the middle of the street. That didn't do it for Christian MAGA. Okay. It wasn't the fact that he's applying double-digit taxes on everything we buy because he has a false sense of economy. He literally thinks factories appear at his will in the United States and fulfill supply chains. It's not how it works. It wasn't the fact that he literally treats every single woman on earth except for his daughter, and he's still pervy about her. But if it isn't Ivanka, there isn't a woman on this planet he actually cares about. And I told my wife the other day at dinner, I said, that part makes me sad. If any man goes through life without a woman to love and care for, and be loved and be cared for, you're an empty soul. And I think he is an empty soul. This man has no character. He has no judgment. He has no acumen. He has no wherewithal, no common sense. But you let him go through all these stages. And, you know, I completely understand the Christianity history. You know, Luther tacked a note on the door, started Lutheranism, broke off to the Protestant branch. Then we had Calvinism and a bunch of stuff here in North America. And right from the very beginning of the Great Split, the Great Split was between what was being taught as Jesus's words, and like the book of Matthew and the book of John, and it was replaced on the other side with the book of Paul. Paul is not Jesus. But we have a wide sect of people, sects plural, a wide swath of people in multiple sects who have, either knowingly or unknowingly, I don't know how it works in each individual's mind, but I think most of the preachers understand that they are not preaching the words of Jesus Christ. They are preaching the words of Paul the Evangelizer. Because if you ask any like Jesuit seminarian, I was tutored by Jesuits when I was a kid. I was pretty advanced in math and other things, so my mom dropped me off at the seminary, and I couldn't walk. I was in my cast at the time, so a couple of seminary friars come out, lift me up out of the car, boom, take me inside. They set me up at a big table, and it was kind of halfway on the floor so I could sit with my cast, and then they start giving me all these great tutoring lessons on advanced algebra and stuff like that. They taught me a whole bunch of shit. It was good. I really liked being tutored by the Jesuits. Good men. I never had any problem. None of the ugly stuff happened. None of that. It was a great experience. But to the Jesuit teachings, it's very clear that the words of Jesus is Matthew, especially Matthew 25, and the book of John. And if you read Matthew and you read it as you would correctly read any literature, you would hear the message very clearly is you have two faiths, according to Matthew. It's your faith in God and faith in your neighbor. Okay. What does Paul do? Paul says, love an idea and then place yourself above the rest. Or at least that's the way it's been practiced, especially here in America. And there's a lot of backing to this. Remember, again, the moral majority, the immoral minority guys. Okay. They were the prosperity preachers who were better than you. They're better citizens, even though we got caught with tax evasion. We got caught fleecing our congregation. We got caught raping Jessica Hahn. Okay. They said they were more moral and better Christians than you because they were popular and they were rich. So they were the first prosperity preachers, long before Copeland or G Money, the what the hell is his name? The dude from South Carolina who likes the airplanes. What the heck is his name? I can see his face right now. But they're all con artists. They think they think they possess the grace of Christ because they're successful, wealthy, and you pay attention to them. You, on the other hand, you do not have the grace of Christ. You are a pleb who has to tithe me your money. They all hate taxes. All good Christians hate taxes, but they love the church tax. because a tithe is literally a church tax. You like paying taxes as long as your taxes go to people who look like you and act like you and say the same words as you. Okay. That may have been Paul's intent, but I don't think it was ever Jesus's intent. Hey, but what do I know? I'm just an atheist who's read the book. And that's a big thing. And that's a big one. Why the heck did it get so hot in here? Okay, the afternoon sun kicked in. It's been cool and raining off and on, and now all of a sudden it's hotter than hell in my office. Oh. So how can you be reasonably surprised? You have been following Franklin Graham since his dad, since the late 60s. We went through the whole late 70s, 80s, early 90s with the moral majority and Jerry Falwell's bullshit. Okay? Then we went through the prosperity preachers. Then the prosperity preachers hired lawyers and created Christian legal groups. Because now they're going to sue you because they love Jesus so much. But what do they sue about? They sue about them having different rules than everybody else. But now you're surprised. Now you're surprised that he goes full on fucking bonkers and puts himself in the place of Jesus. Okay. I just a funny test on how out there and how obvious that render was. I dropped the render into ChatGPT and I said, hey, without any comment from me, I gotta find the note here. Without any comment from me, go ahead and evaluate. Oh, here it is. Okay. So without any comment from me, evaluate this depiction for a sane viewer. Okay. This is what was outputted by ChatGPT. A sane viewer would likely read this as cultic political iconography, not normal campaign messaging. It depicts Christ unmistakably in Christ-like form. White robe, red mantle, laying the hands, emitting a healing light, surrounded by praying followers, soldiers, a nurse, eagles, jets, fireworks, and a heavenly tableau with the Statue of Liberty elevated in a near saintly symbolism. The message is not subtle. What the message says is Trump is not merely a politician. He is a chosen redeemer, a healer, and a protector of the nation, a figure with almost divine legitimacy. Why this image feels so extreme fuses several things together at once: religious sanctification, nationalism, military power, and personal worship. For a neutral or psychologically grounded viewer, the effect is likely to be one of grandiosity, manipulation, and unease. It does not say support my policies. It says revere me. Few things stand out visually. Trump is at the center of a sole source of light and power. The sick man receives a miracle directly from his touch. The crowd around him looks reverent, almost devotional. Military hardware and political symbols frame him as both holy and martial. Heavenly figures above him imply cosmic approval. So the emotional register is not democratic, it's messianic. A reasonable viewer could see this as blasphemous, or at least deeply sacrilegious, because it borrows from the Christian healing imagery and applies it to a political leader. Many believers that crosses from symbolism into idolatrous branding. Remember, idolatry used to be a big thing, but then they made him a golden calf in his first term. You remember that? The last thing ChatGPT said was, in plain English, this looks like less like political art and more like a leader cult propaganda dressed as religious revelation. Love says, have you noticed that Trump Jesus dude is looking pretty chunky? I don't think Jesus himself was that big. Yes, that's I did notice too. Chubby Jesus. I did notice that. But how can you be surprised by him doing idolatry of himself? He literally made himself into a golden calf for CPAC in his first term. Then all the CPAC attendees, all the rubes, all the sycophants, all the acolytes took pictures and declared it the best thing they've ever seen. They literally were taking a picture as Trump as a golden calf, but you're surprised when he shows up as healing Jesus with the seraphims coming out of the cosmic gateway. That surprises you. How? And how many times has Trump been asked, well, what's your favorite biblical verse since you're so Christian? Can't pull out a single line and verse. Not even Leviticus, which is the American politicized Christian's favorite book. It's definitely not the book of Mark. It's definitely not the Sermon on the Mount. They love the angry, pissed off deity who gives you permission to harm other people for their offenses. In fact, Andy Ogles today, MAGA fuckhearted weirdo from Texas, and Benny Johnson, a full-size MAGA butt plug, a human-sized butt plug, they did a podcast together today, and they exclaimed proudly that Representative Eric Swalwell of California should be hung. Now, first of all, idiots, bad grammar, it's hanged. When you hang somebody to death, it's hanged in the past tense. It's not hung. You hung up a picture on the wall. You hanged a person till death. Two different words, okay? And it's funny how they want Eric Swalwell hanged until death for his offenses. But they don't want Tony Gonzalez, Pete Hegseth, Donald J. Trump, an adjudicated rapist. I put that up in notes today. The judge said Trump raped E. Jean Carroll. Oh, and the entire Epstein class. Why aren't you calling for those people to be hanged? Not hung, hanged. Why not? Hypocrites. Oh, and by the way, if Andy Ogles and Benny Johnson ended up in a dungeon sex video that made it to the dark web and they're spit roasting Kyle Rittenhouse, I'm not saying it's true or whatever. I'm just saying I won't be surprised. Okay. They want Swalwell hanged, but they don't want Tony Gonzalez hanged. They don't want anybody else hanged because they're the good Christians and they can't be judged. Yeah, we know. You keep telling us that. You keep telling us the law must be followed empirically. If it's you, every offense must be maximally punished. If it's you. If it's the Epstein class, including Donald Trump and his orbit, no. Whatever they did was Christ-like. Robert Morris in Trump's first term, was his chief spiritual advisor and on his religiosity protection board, or whatever horseshit he created. Robert Morris went to prison for raping a 12-year-old girl. Why did not Andy Ogles and Benny Johnson call for Robert Morris, who's already been released from jail? Okay? Felonious rape of a minor, a 12-year-old girl. He only went to jail for a little over 6 months. He's out back at his house now. Why didn't they call for Robert Morris to be hanged? Not hung like a pitcher, hanged like a execution. Why? Does anybody with a red hat stop to think about these things? Are you just that gullible? If we're going to hang Eric Swalwell, we definitely go down to Florida, where they just put that insurrectionist guy back in prison for life plus many years for abduction and rape. Or the other guy in Georgia who sexually tortured a minor and got life plus years. We're gonna vacate the judge's decision, and we're gonna walk them up to the gallows, right? Right, Benny? Right, Andy? Oh, you were just doing empty projection as a couple of MAGA dickheads. You just decided to be the two biggest dickheads today. They're playing you, Sparky. This is a street gang that is a criminal cabal being led by a goddamn felon. And the only problems they can see is with somebody else. Like, I don't have a dog in this fight. Tony Gonzalez is gone. I'm an independent. Do I give a fuck? No. Eric Swalwell is a Democrat. I'm an independent. Eric Swalwell's gone. Do I give a fuck? No. The one that's up on ethics charges for stealing from the campaign donations, boot them out too. Okay, the ones that you think are members who are under the foreign influence of other people living outside of America, they can go too. I don't care. And I hate this stupid finger pointing. Well, if Tony's got to go, then Eric's got to go. Yeah, exactly. You're not making a point. Nobody knows. Yes, that's exactly what should happen. That could go unsaid. We know. All felons should not be in Congress. Yes, clearly. No, none of them should be. Nor should they be in the White House. Whether I'm talking about Trump or the ex-con who's now running Trump's pardon fiasco. Yes, a former federal prisoner is now running pardons for Trump. And we know that people are paying intermediaries money to get access to the White House to entertain their pardon. And the pardons were always the get out of jail free card. This is why they're following Project 2025. They know it's illegal. They know it's unconstitutional, but all their bet is on mass pardons. And this has already been revealed twice. The Doge douchebags, the little children they sent in, the little hackers to steal our data, commit computer tampering. They said in their own depositions, they knew this was computer tampering. They knew this was data theft. They knew they were committing crimes. They were told they were going to get a pardon from Trump. Then it's revealed just last week at the end of the news cycle on Friday is people are leaking from inside the White House is people are parading to the chief of staff to get on the list for the mass pardons. And it's not just people who work at the White House. Like he already pardoned more than 1,500 people who levied war against the United States at the Capitol in the insurrection. He plans an even bigger mass pardon to cover up his crimes of the second administration. Because why? They know it's illegal. They know it's unconstitutional. They don't care. So that's the fourth thing he hijacked, the law and the Constitution. Rule of law. Take the whole fucking rule of law things out of your mouth. It's a joke at this point. Up to and including rule of law, there is no rule of law. Okay? He just threatened another war crime today. Rule of law, he doesn't know what that is, nor does he care. Instead, he said, I'm going to sink any vessel I want on the waters Don't mess with me. Okay. You're going to declare a war against China and start sinking Chinese ships? Another reason why the midterms are so damn important. Congress should have already shut this down. Congress should have already said, hell no. They should have also impeached Hegseth right out of the gate for asking $200 billion 10 days into a war. Okay, you went into the war on a whim and a grievance. You didn't brief Congress. You don't have the money to affect the conflict. And now you want to do a backdoor financing job. Okay. Immediately, they should have impeached Hegseth. Out you go. Probably Kane, too. You can go, too. Okay. So don't buy the reverse PR, the marketing after the fact, that the Christians now are so offended by Trump being an idolatry moron, a blasphemer, a usurper. That's the power you spent 10 years giving him. You can't be surprised now. That's not logically possible. Unless you're telling me all the Red Hat rubes have such a low IQ or such a mental disability that they cannot figure out fact from fiction. If that's true, boy, we're in more trouble than I thought. Because it's one thing to be ideologically stupid for political theater. It's another thing to drink the grape Kool-Aid. Too many people in America have drank the grape Kool-Aid. That's a problem. Okay. You cannot be surprised at this point. He is literally trying to replace Jesus. Where do you, the Un family, Kim Jong-un, his dad and his grandfather ruled the country for decades after his death. It was a necrocracy, leadership by a dead guy, because North Korea, they'll pull any bullshit in. Stalinism, Goodfellow gangsterism, voodoo, necroxy. They don't give a shit what crap they pull in to support their bullshit. Okay? And the first thing that family did was made themselves gods. And that's a dictatorship common denominator right there. They're always handpicked by God, and only the God they can talk to. Even though, remember, I told you, they can't talk to God. They're talking to one of the high choir because their brains would explode. They're always put there by God, they're anointed by God, or they are God. And I find that pretty annoying. But understand why that render was posted. He really did think the Red Hat rubes would eat that up, go to church on Sunday, and start chanting Trump's name instead of Jesus, singing Jesus's psalms. He has usurped your entire religion, and he's a convicted felon, an adjudicated rapist, and a highly suspected pedophile. And you allowed him to do this. Okay. My wife just sent me a message, and this is true. This is how we got the rapture story. She just said, all God's visions made me wonder if they're all having temporal lobe seizures. That's exactly how we got the rapture. People have looked into the Scottish girl that the British preacher talked to in the mid-1800s and came up with the whole story of the rapture. She said she was having visions and talking to God. Okay. More likely she was having an epileptic seizure. Okay. So realize that Dear Leader Porn Star Humper does have a Messiah complex. That's part of his complex malignant narcissism. Okay. And don't think for a second, he did not use idolatry. He did not use blasphemy. He is a usurper. Take these things as facts. Okay. Because that was his intent. How do I know? I've been watching all this shit for 10 years. Okay. And the first clue is even back in the 80s, where I learned to loathe Donald Trump as one of the biggest assholes in this country. Okay. One of the things very early on in the 80s I learned about him, he is a true megalomaniac. He literally thinks he shits roses. Okay. So again, if you're surprised at this juncture, I question your cognitive ability and your intelligence. And if you don't want to be seen or treated like a moron in the future, get off this horse shit with Trump. Because he is blasphemous. He is a usurper. Okay? He used idolatry to promote himself. And it's not the first time he did it. Okay? This is why I've been telling you all the time, you need to think independently, be independent, vote independent, run for local office as an independent. Okay. Think for yourself. Even when my kids were little and my wife and I were homeschooling, I said, you have to respect adults. Okay. But you don't have to listen to them. And you can tell an adult no. You're just gonna have to explain to me later why. And if it's a good reason, then you're good for telling them no. Okay. You need to treat Donald Trump the same way. He's a bad man. He's a bad adult. Okay. He's the creep in the windowless 1970s Ford Alkaline van combing a neighborhood. Get it? Don't be surprised at this point, because your surprise to me is fictional bullshit. Okay. All right, I got a couple other things in draft here. I'll get them up here very soon. Be back on with some other. I have a couple of points on my notepad I'll talk about tonight or tomorrow. Until next time, please, 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 please. There's too much hokum going on. There's too much at stake here. So please think about it. Peace.